Yeah, I will preface this by saying, yes, this is another random mark with a camera that has an opinion. Ooh. So before you can be like, oh, you're not in the business, I'm sure, I get it. This is just my opinion. It could be completely wrong, and I will recognize that in some aspect I might be wrong about this. But this is my opinion, and I felt I needed to get this off my chest, even if no one watches, which probably will be the case. But anyway, let's get going. I've been making videos talking about women's wrestling a lot. It's because it's the aspect of WWE I find the most tolerable when it's done well. I think that's the. I'm much more invested in the women than I am in the men because I often think they're a lot better storytellers when they're given reins to work with. Problem with main roster booking is that they don't give them the proper reins to work with, and yeah. Anyway, but I want to talk about a specific topic today, the Bella twins. This will, of course, tie into the recent Liv Morgan injury thing. And I waited a week to talk about this because I wanted to cool off a bit and see the responses and talk about it. And the first thing I would say, I think that the hate the Bellas, and especially Brie received for this, is unjustified in at least in the way it's expressed. It is hypocritical to an extent. It is at least partially sexist, and it's not a good thing. But I understand why it's there too. And I know that Daniel Bryan recently came out and defended his wife. And I'm not using the real names because it becomes confusing if I'm going to be trying to be smart and use the, call him Brian Danielson and whatever. I just call them by the ring names. It's easier for everyone involved. But anyway, he came out and defended his wife and came with some very reasonable arguments. And yeah, that was a very good point. And the hate she has received is disproportionate and unjustified. She doesn't really have a history of injuring people. But the thing about her, and the thing about Nikki, and the thing about the current climate is that we're talking about the brand here, or we're talking about the brand of women's wrestling, and the Bellas don't belong in that brand. And I'm not saying anything about it. I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything. I'm sure they're lovely, lovely girls. But they're very empowered women who go out there and are great marketers and do stuff. Awesome. But they're not wrestlers. At least they're not perceived to be wrestlers by the general public, or at least by the general wrestling fan, I should say. I mean, the reality show circuit might be different, but the wrestling fans don't consider them to be wrestlers. They consider them to be divas, and I know it's not their fault. It's not their fault. They were associated with that brand, and they were notable in the diva era that poisoned them as a commodity to an extent, at least with the wrestling fans. Now, I'm not going to comment on their ability as a draw and so on. I'm just going to say that they don't belong with the sort of image that WWE is trying to construct. And I think they would love to belong. I mean, as they've said in interviews, like before the women's evolution took place on the main roster, they were like jealous of the NXT girls because the NXT girls got proper wrestling time and proper wrestling training. Because remember, before Sarah Malta became the trainer down at developmental, like the women were trained in diva style wrestling. So unless you had independent experience, you were taught to wrestle in a very specific way: hair pulling, rolling around, catfight stuff, and not like to an extent not real wrestling because women weren't expected to be draws. I mean, this is a well-known fact. I remember in the AJ Lee biography, she talked about how one WWE executive, I'm sure it was Joe Laurinaitis, but I don't know, she didn't name any names, literally said to her, well, the problem is that women may want to be like you and guys want to hang out with you, but nobody wants to fuck you. That was the sort of brand they were going for. Even when it entered into PG, that was the sort of idea they built the women around. And the Bellas were a part of that. image. And this only really started to break away with AJ and with NXT women. So as a marketer, I don't think it's the best idea to take too many throwbacks from that. Like you can take some of the women before that era because they had a little more ambiguous sort of image. But really, I think Trish and Lita were overrated. I mean, good, but the whole they main event draw was, yeah, overhyped. The women of this era are far superior, to be honest, at least when it comes to WWE wrestling. And every time the Bellas come back, it becomes very painfully obvious that they don't belong. And I mean, they've improved. They've improved quite a bit. And I mean, ring rust is a thing. Rhea has been pregnant and ring rust has accumulated. Very understandable. But when they just come in and take the spots of the women of today, like I'm sure the general wrestling fan would much rather want to see heel Sasha Banks versus Ronda Rousey at the Evolution pay-per-view, for example, uh, or Becky Lynch for that matter, cross-promotional fights and so on. There are lots of stuff you could do with it. And they get offended when the WWE are very clearly pushing for the plan of having one of the Bellas, and by one of them I mean Nikki, fight. It just doesn't make sense. And they also don't have, I call it, as a term I've coined, but it's not an original term. I call it athletic credibility as a subset of the whole charisma package of wrestling. In that I don't believe the Bellas as fighters. And I don't. This is not the shit on them. Like, I'm sorry, it's not meant to come off that way. But I'm just trying to explain why I think there's so much heat on them by the fan. And it's not this one. It's not good heel heat because they're not portrayed as heels. They're portrayed as baby faces, and they're not booed out of every arena or anything. I understand why they're disliked by the wrestling fans, I think, and it's because they don't have that athletic credibility. They're attached to a painful past. It's like going to back to a family dinner where you were, witness something really embarrassing, and a moment of that embarrassment just lingers around. It's uncomfortable to deal with, especially when they're like, let's say it's a garden gnome. People still bring out that fucking garden gnome. And like, oh, look at this pretty garden gnome. It's just as good as the other garden decoration. And they're like, doesn't fit. Doesn't fit at all. Like, it does not match the rose bushes. Okay, it's a big yellow garden gnome. Why are you putting in a lot of red stuff? Yeah. Like, that's not a good example, but I'm just trying to illustrate the point. And it's the same feeling I think the wrestling fans have when they see the Bellas in prominent positions as wrestlers. It just doesn't fit. I don't think it fits with the sort of expectations we have. And I think that since the women's division is still young, it could still very easily go the way of the tag team division and become a complete joke. I think it's very important that you have the premier workers work. And that doesn't mean always the four horsewomen. There are tons of other premier workers in WWE, and it will be coming up to the main roster soon enough. I mean, Asuka, Kairi Sane, Tony Storm, Io Shirai, like those just on NXT alone, and Bianca Belair. Oh my God, she's good, and Nikki Cross, and all of these great women are also coming up, and there are good women on the main roster too. I think some of them are damaged goods in the terms of the kind of brand they have. Natalia, really good wrestler, but I think she's damaged because she's been used very poorly over the years. Same with Naomi. Still good, but I'm just like, yeah. So bringing the Bellas back and having them just come in and take the top spot will leave a sour taste in someone's mouth. And when you combine that with they've never been good, they've been average, but at best, never been good wrestlers. And when you combine that with extreme ring rust in Bree's case, I mean, she has botched a lot. And when you don't have goodwill to draw upon, there's much less forgiveness for that sort of thing. Like Daniel Bryan used examples like I concussed Nigel McGuinness back in 2009 before we went our separate ways to WWE and TNA respectively and so on. And I'm like, yeah, that's very understandable. And I mean, you've concussed yourself by accident several times too, back in your early days. And I mean, but the difference between you in 2009 and Brie Bella in 2018 is that you'd built up a lot of goodwill and credibility with the fans as a worker, like as a wrestler, as a guy who did really devastating looking shit, but it was safe, right? Brie doesn't have that. She doesn't have that reputation. She only has the reputation of being an average at best wrestler who really doesn't belong with the sort of brand, the sort of women, like strong women athlete brand they have. She's still viewed as a diva. And that's not her fault. It's just all this can be blamed on WWE, except for that she's been, and even the ring rust isn't really her fault. I mean, she's been pregnant. That sort of thing changes the body, and it takes time to get back into ring shape. And it's harder to get back into ring shape. And I don't mean that she's out of shape. I just mean that you're getting into the swing of things when you've not been that good to begin with. Yeah. So I get why. So I think that's why people lashed out, because they saw, which was a really moment. They saw this, and I think that was just the drop that made the goblet ran over, and it's an unfair spillover. Okay, like she hasn't really injured people. I mean, she potatoed for Ruby Riott in the face in the same match, and I think that just like all of those things added to this perception of her as a really unsafe worker. It's just that she's a bit rusty at the moment and not that good. So don't take it out of her. But I think there's all of these factors involved, and of course there is sexism. There is, of course, sexism. I'm not denying that. And I'm not even one of those people who are like, oh God damn it, she's so unsafe and dangerous. I'm more in the category of like, I wish them the best. I hope they still have reality TV shows and do all their internet marketing stuff and their own brands and sell merchandise and have a great time. I just don't think they belong in the current women's era. It's the same way why I don't like it when legends necessarily are brought back. I don't think necessarily they enhance the product. I actually think they in a lot of ways detract from it. Like nostalgia boosts are okay, but they does not have a long shelf life. And when it's very painfully obvious that these guys get free reign to do whatever they want and you script every single word everyone else says, it comes off it makes the product look bad. And this is sort of a reverse situation where they come in and they're monumentally worse, and they're sort of dragging the product down by being like, it's a sort of an opposite dragging, in that their prominent position, rather than making everyone else look bad, annoys everyone else because they don't belong there. And I'm once again reiterated, I'm not saying I have anything against the girls. Or women. I think they're great. No problem with them. But I don't think they belong with the brand that WWE is trying to build. And of course, there's a lot of hypocrisy in them building this brand. But that's a matter to be discussed another time. Point is, I don't think they fit, and I think and I know they're trying to, but she's a name. She has a lot of Instagram followers and reality TV. And I'm like, sure, and there is an argument to be made for that. But most of the reality TV show fans don't really care about watching Nikki Bella in a fight. Or Brie Bella in a fight, for that matter. And I think the WWE has had an issue with realizing that what built this division was ring skills and character work second, not character work first. You need people with the athletic credibility to keep this division going. And while I love Alexa Bliss, I think she's an amazing mic worker, she doesn't have athletic credibility. Nobody thinks that she's going to win a fight with anyone. Like even Sasha Banks, it's not even a case of size or anything. Sasha Banks is about as small as she is. But I can believe her in a fight, even with Nia Jax, even if that's a bit of a stretch. I can see that. I can't really see Alexa Bliss in a fight in most cases. Like the Ronda match the first time was great because nobody thought coming in that Alexa Bliss could stand with Ronda in the ring, and both because of the build up and just because of the way they did work. And I think Alexa Bliss should stay in NXT longer to improve more in the ring because while she is athletic, I mean she can do a lot of flips. She's well trained, but she isn't a fighter sort of thing, and I think that's lacking. And the same problem with Carmella, but this is a much bigger problem with the Bellas, and that clashes with the idea of the brand you're trying to make. And I think that's why people are outraged, because people want to see the women of today in the prominent position. They want to see the women who they know are good workers work. They don't want to see the Bells come back in. Because, and it's also because the way WWE has portrayed them. Remember when this whole women's revolution started? The Bellas were booked as the heels who were the representation of the old, stagnated, horrible division. Like the Bella Empire. Remember that? It was literally a thing. So, and we all know this is fake, but fans can say that as much as they want, but they get tricked by WWE booking all the time, even on purpose by them and not on purpose. Like the whole Brock Lesnar thing. Yeah, when everyone I hate Brock Lesnar, he's a part timer. Oh my god. Engineered by WWE because they really wanted people to dislike the shit out of him, and they made the story that he didn't care about the fans. And there's one thing that's always worked is to make someone a heel is to make the fans think they don't care about wrestling, because then wrestling fans get pissed. It worked. And the same thing here, and the same thing with WWE having themselves portrayed as a heel, because whenever they really try to push someone, when it's not the fans' ID first, they get pissed because they associate the promotion with the bad guy inadvertently. It's not a conscious thing, but if you portray the promotion as the bad guy for over 20 years, that's the sort of impression that's just going to be left there. Anyway, so when looking into this Liv Morgan injury, and I mean, it was an accident. Accident happened. It was Ida's fault, but there was extenuating circumstances. It was understandable why that happened. I would have. I think it was weird that she didn't stop after she noticed that she kicked someone in the face the first time. Because when Liv Morgan was kicked, hit her right in her jaw, she was stunned, slumped forward, and re-kicked again, which was weird. But yeah. Still, accidents happen. Seen lots of worse stuff than that done by much better wrestlers. So it's unfair the amount of hate she's received. I'm just trying to explain, I think, why some parts of why that hate is around when you ignore the sexism angle. Because, as I said before, there is definitely a sexism thing to it too. But I don't know necessarily how much of it is sexism and how much of it is that the Bella, and I mean, the Bellas has been portrayed like the non-athletic, non-wrestlers forever, even when they were active. Like, I mean, like the famous line from AJ, talent isn't sexually transmitted. Talent popped huge for that. Because when you portray them that way, of course people are going to be left with that impression, regardless of how true it is or not. And that's all, really. And I think that the Bellas should see this, see that our time has come and gone, and it's time to move on and do other stuff. We don't need to wrestle in the ring anymore. It's been a huge part of our careers and lives and all that, but I think we can do a lot of good things outside of it. I can. We can do a lot of good still. There's smart, empowered women who have a lot of other career stuff going for them. They don't really need to wrestle. And I think it's the same thing as a lot of the other women saw, like with Eve, for example, Eve Torres, which was a who was better than them, to be honest. Not that that matters, but I mean, she's her time was come and gone, and she wanted to do something else, and she's doing a great job working for women with women's self-defense and jiu-jitsu and stuff. Amazing, and she's doing acting too. Amazing. I'm not even saying that they can't do anything physical. Like, and a good way if they still want to wrestle, I think they should go out on independence, and they can still earn money. They're names. They're names. They can probably earn a good living on the independents. And it's not and do their YouTube stuff and so on. And if they want to wrestle and then boom earn some credibility that way. Or wrestle on NXT house shows. Sure, that would be good. Not that I think that the women at NXT probably are better than them, but they can still benefit from someone with the experience with life on the road and WWE politics to come there and talk to them about that and stuff. I think that would be good. And I also wanted to make this video because I saw a discussion. Someone posted how they think that the Bellas are a cancer to the thing and didn't contribute to the women's revolution. And I saw Carmella respond to that article. I think it was in NoDQ.com. I'm like, this is bad. Everyone contributed. And I'm sort of in the middle on that, where I think a lot of the women would have wanted to contribute, but they weren't given the opportunity by management to. But let's not kid ourselves. The Bellas were not the source of the women's revolution, nor did they contribute to it in a positive way. Total Divas is not the positive contributor to women's wrestling. It's a negative one, in my opinion. I think that it's, not that. It's not a good thing. And the women who we all know who contributed and who didn't. And the Bellas are not on the highest part of the list. But I think that if they had been given the opportunity to, they would have contributed. But they just didn't have the stroke at the time or the skills to necessarily do it. But they aren't cancers. And I know that maybe I've said that in a hyperbolic rant at some point that, cancers, horrible. And I mean, they aren't cancers, but they just don't fit in the marketplace at the moment. They're not the commodity that fits with the product. It's the same reason why I don't think Joey Ryan ever will be appearing on a WWE show. Because regardless of what you think about this stuff, I'm in Cam Cornette, by the way, just so you know. But his stuff doesn't fit with the brand, okay? Like the Dick Wrestler doesn't fit with the brand, therefore he's not on there, and he shouldn't be on there. This is how it is. Same with what was I going to say? Same with I wouldn't have wanted the Asuka in the women's division in 2010 because one, too good for that. Secondly, not the sort of I don't know how good she was in 2010. I'm not that knowledgeable, but the point is, not the sort of brand that she would fit in. You could also argue that she doesn't really fit in on the main roster either. Not her fault, more an indictment of the main roster, to be honest. But yeah, my point still stands. Like, it's not hateful to say that someone doesn't fit with the brand, someone doesn't have the athletic credibility or character credibility for that matter either. Like, I remember when Sheamus was the Celtic Warrior fella. Like, he didn't have that much credibility with that character, in my opinion. He didn't fit that well. Just that. Or, or the Miz as like a valiant babyface fighting Brock Lesnar at one point. Like, it doesn't have that athletic credibility, to be honest. Like, you could see like Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles do it because you think they could like lock him in a submission or use their quickness to get away. But yeah, not the Miz. Same thing here. Like, you could see Charlotte, like this fucking super athlete of a woman, or Becky Lynch, this experienced indie wrestler and a grappler, and Bailey, the valiant baby, not Bailey, but like the valiant baby face, like she who's really strong and does all the power moves, and Sasha Banks, who's this really smart, insidious sort of heel who is also rather athletic too and is willing to do everything. And so you can see them, but Bellas don't have that. You don't really think of the Bellas as like, and I know, and some people, the wrestlers, you don't think of them. Let's be honest. You don't think, like when you see something, let's say Asuka, let's say, who's going to fight Asuka? You don't think, oh yeah, Nikki Bella has this. As a reference to Royal Rumble, because that was what that Rumble was weird, but you don't think that way. You're not sitting there thinking, okay, Nikki, if you're totally equal to Asuka, you totally can fight her, or Ronda Rousey for that matter. I would like, and it's not necessarily indicating if they are capable of fighting for real or not. There are tons of wrestlers who you think have athletic credibility who couldn't probably aren't good fighters for real. Like John Cena, I'm sure John Cena is not much of a shooter or anything, or I can guarantee it because he's not that graceful. Let's be honest. But you can believe him. And it's not just because he's huge and has muscles. There's tons of people who's not huge and have muscles that have athletic credibility. Like even like Evan Bourne or Matt Seidel, you could believe him. You would believe him as a player because he's so quick and he has those kicks. And you see that he's right. It's one of those intangibles. It's the difference between an Adam Rose and a Velveteen Dream, where you don't believe Adam Rose, but you believe Velveteen Dream while they still have weird characters. And it's not even necessarily being a pretty girl or not. Like Trish Stratus has athletic credibility, and she was, the definition of a sex symbol. But Sable did not have athletic credibility. Oh, just how it goes. Some people have it and some people doesn't. And it's not necessarily something you can teach, I think. And that's the thing with the Bellas. Just to summarize this incoherent rant, the Bellas don't have a lot of goodwill with the wrestling fans. There's sexism going on, so that never helps. They've never been good. They're associated with the brand that most people have disdain for, and a lot of ring rust and unfortunate accidents have been happening. So they've been getting a lot of hate. Not saying that hate is justified. I'm just explaining why I think that's. I just explained why I thought that's a thing, and I don't know what to do about it. I would love, I'm not saying I wish anyone to not have a job or anything. I just don't think they belong. I think they could belong in maybe they could belong if they put people over. I could see that. Put some young and up and coming women wrestler over. I mean, that's a role they could serve in. I don't know, but they don't. They're not main eventers. They don't have the ring skills to keep with anymore. And in today's WWE, you can't be that bad anymore. Like it's not this. It's not the 80s, okay? And I mean the 80s. There were also great workers in the 80s. WWE not so much at that time, or WWF as it was known as then. Like you can't have that going for you. It just isn't the same thing. It just is not the same thing. And it's not like Rob Van Dam once pointed out in an interview, like when he came back to WWE after his absence, like there's a much lower tolerance for sucking as compared to before. Like I mean, the one guy Vince McMahon thanked Jim Cornette for doing the working with him developmental was Snitsky. Yeah, or you remember Heidenreich? Yeah, and the Bellas are kind of like the Heidenreichs. That's sort of not that bad, but they could fit in the previous era, but they don't fit anymore due to both their aptitude and lack thereof and their marketing. The way they've been portrayed on television for over 10 years at this point. We're not over. We're going in 10 years now, almost over 10 years. Or did it start in 2000? And not the point, not the point. But that's just like I remember, like they were like back in the guest host era of Raw, their entire shtick was that they were literally arm candy. Literally, that was their character. Was that they were the arm candy for the random guest host of that week. And while I'm sure not know people specifics, these sort of images built, okay, they lay the foundation for things to come. And another example I would use, Chris Jericho, right? Chris Jericho and Edge. Like in 2010, while Edge has been a much more like if you look at it, he has been a much more prolific world champion than Chris Jericho was. Chris Jericho had that sort of image built from his early career because he was a big deal, in the Attitude Era and stuff. So, and despite the fact that I think actually Edge started in WWE before Chris did, Chris Jericho's like, Edge, you're a Chris Jericho wannabe, and the crowd bought into it because Chris Jericho had that already built up credibility over years. And Edge started earlier, later. So it wasn't quite the same. It's just how it goes. Image is both short term and long term. So it's why wrestlers who have had very long term good careers have more cachet to lose and stuff. Like while new people who don't have much of an established brand can't lose as much because they don't necessarily can't necessarily recover from that. Anyway, that's my incoherent rant. If anyone sees it, comment for by all means. Yeah, I want to preface this saying again, I don't think anything bad about the Bells. I don't mind them. I don't have any hate for them. I just said why I think there's some animosity towards them among the wrestling fans. And that's all. See you around.